The sound of my father's voice still echoes in my head, crystal clear, like it happened yesterday instead of 3 years ago. "I'm proud of all my children," he announced at our annual family dinner, his chest puffed out with that familiar arrogance, "except the loser." 23 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Everyone knew exactly who he meant. The room went dead silent except for the sound of my heart shattering into a million pieces. My name is Jasmine Johnson, and at 19, I was the family disappointment, the college dropout, the one who couldn't get her life together, the daughter who didn't measure up to her siblings' achievements. But here's the thing about being called a loser by your own father in front of your entire family. It either breaks you completely or it becomes the fuel that transforms you into something unstoppable. I chose the latter. What happened after I walked out of that dinner? Well, let's just say my father's words aged like milk left out in the Texas heat, because the loser he dismissed that night, she just signed a six-figure deal with Southwest Airlines. She's about to be featured in Vogue magazine. She's building a business empire that makes more money than he's ever dreamed of. Before I tell you how I went from being the family embarrassment to having my father literally beg for my forgiveness, and how I made him eat those words in the most spectacular way possible, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and smash that like button if you've ever been counted out by the people who were supposed to believe in you most. Because trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why the word loser became the most expensive word my father ever spoke, and why that family dinner 3 years ago was the last time anyone in my family ever questioned my worth. But to understand how sweet my revenge was, you need to know how deep that betrayal cut. You need to see what my life looked like before everything fell apart. Because from the outside, we were the perfect American family. To understand how that one sentence destroyed me, you need to see what my life looked like before everything fell apart. Picture this: a beautiful two-story brick house in Oak Cliff, Dallas, with a perfectly manicured lawn and my mama's prized rose bushes lining the front porch. From the outside, we were the Johnsons, the family everyone in the neighborhood looked up to. My father, Robert Johnson, was a successful insurance broker who drove a gleaming black Mercedes and commanded respect when he walked into any room. Mama, Patricia Johnson, was a high school principal who somehow managed to look flawless even after dealing with teenagers all day. She was active in our church, hosted the best Sunday dinners in the neighborhood, and had a laugh that could light up any room. We were that family, the one that looked perfect in every Christmas card, the one other parents pointed to when they wanted to motivate their kids. "Look at the Johnson children," they'd say. "Now that's how you raise successful kids." And my siblings? Lord, they were everything parents dream of. My older brother Devin was 25, a resident doctor at Parkland Hospital, already engaged to a beautiful lawyer named Nicole. Every time someone mentioned his name, their eyes would light up. "Dr. Johnson's son," they'd whisper with reverence. He was the golden boy who could do no wrong. Then there was my younger sister, Alicia. At 17, she was already being recruited by colleges for her academic achievements, valedictorian of her class, president of the debate team, winner of every academic competition she entered. She had this natural confidence that made adults say that Alicia Johnson is going places. And then there was me, Jasmine, the middle child who somehow got lost in the shuffle of all that excellence. Our Sunday dinners were legendary affairs where the whole extended family would gather around Mama's dining room table. The smell of her famous fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread would fill the house, and the sound of laughter and conversation would echo through every room. These dinners were where family achievements were celebrated, where future plans were discussed, and where everyone felt like they belonged. Or so I thought. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed. The way conversations would naturally flow around my siblings' accomplishments while my contributions got polite nods before the topic quickly shifted. The way my parents' faces would beam with pride when talking about Devon's medical school achievements or Alicia's academic awards, but their expressions would become carefully neutral when discussing my attempts at college. I tried to fit into their vision of success. I really did. I started at Texas Southern University as a business major, thinking I could follow in Daddy's entrepreneurial footsteps. But something about sitting in those lecture halls made me feel like I was suffocating. While my classmates seemed energized by discussions about profit margins, I found myself daydreaming about the photography classes I'd see listed in the course catalog. But photography? That wasn't a real career in the Johnson household. That was a hobby, something you did on weekends, not something you built a life around. The cracks in my perfect family facade started showing during my sophomore year when I began skipping business classes to audit art courses. My grades started slipping, not because I wasn't capable, but because my heart wasn't in it. But I kept up appearances. I still showed up to those Sunday dinners, still smiled when relatives asked about my business studies, still pretended everything was perfectly fine. What I didn't realize was that my parents had already started writing me off. While I was struggling to find my place, they were having conversations about their children's futures that didn't include me in the same way. I thought my family's love was unconditional. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Because what I'm about to tell you is how subtle favoritism works. It's not one big moment of rejection, it's 1,000 tiny cuts that eventually bleed you dry. It started with the little things. Things so small that when I tried to point them out, I sounded like I was being dramatic or oversensitive. But let me paint you the picture of how my family systematically erased me from their definition of success. Christmas morning, 2019. I'll never forget it because it was the first time I really saw the pattern clearly. Devin unwrapped a brand new iPad Pro for his medical research, $1,200. Alicia got a MacBook Air for her college applications, $1,000. I opened my gift to find a $50 Target gift card and a generic journal with Follow Your Dreams printed on the cover. We thought you could use this for your creative writing or whatever it is you're into now, Mama said, with that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When I asked why the huge difference in gifts, Daddy cleared his throat. Well, baby girl, Devin and Alicia are investing in their futures. We're supporting tools that will help them achieve their goals. When you figure out what you want to do with your life, we'll support that too. The message was crystal clear. Their dreams matter, yours don't. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. Family gatherings became showcases for my siblings' achievements, while I became the cautionary tale. Every Sunday dinner felt like a performance, where I was the only one without a script. Uncle Jerome would ask Devin about his residency, and Daddy's chest would puff up with pride. That's my boy, he'd say, clapping Devin on the back. Dr. Johnson in the house. Then they'd turn to Alicia, and the whole table would lean in to hear about her latest academic conquest, full scholarship offers, debate team victories, honor society invitations, each achievement celebrated like she just won the lottery. And then, silence. The kind of heavy, awkward silence that falls when everyone realizes they have to acknowledge the third child, the one who dropped out, the one who doesn't fit the narrative. And how are you doing, Jasmine? Someone would eventually ask, their voice carrying that careful tone people use when they're trying to be polite, but really don't want to hear the answer. Before I could even respond, Daddy would jump in. Jasmine's still figuring things out. You know how it is. Some people need more time to find their path. find their path, like I was lost in the woods instead of just choosing a different route. The worst part was how they talked about me when they thought I couldn't hear. I'll never forget the conversation I accidentally overheard during one of those Sunday dinners. "I just don't understand what happened with Jasmine," Aunt Beverly was saying. "She used to be such a bright child." "Some kids just don't have that drive," Mama replied, her voice carrying disappointment and resignation. "We've given her every opportunity, but you can't force motivation that isn't there." Daddy's voice was even worse. "The boy got my ambition, the baby got Patricia's intelligence, and Jasmine, well, maybe she'll surprise us all one day." Maybe. One day. If we're lucky. I stood there in the hallway, my hand frozen on the door handle, listening to my own parents discuss my life like I was a failed investment they were trying to write off their taxes. But the pattern went deeper than just conversations. It was in every decision, every opportunity, every moment where they had to choose how to invest their time, energy, or resources. When Devin needed help moving into his new apartment, Daddy took 2 days off work and rented a U-Haul. The whole family showed up. But when I needed help moving out of my dorm after dropping out, "Call your cousin TJ if you need muscle," Daddy said without looking up from his newspaper. "I've got a client meeting." When Alicia's debate team made it to state championships, both parents cleared their calendars, drove 6 hours to Austin, and stayed the whole weekend. They even bought matching t-shirts that said, "Alicia's cheering section." But when I finally worked up the courage to show them some photographs I'd taken, pictures I was genuinely proud of, Mama glanced at them for maybe 30 seconds before saying, "Those are nice, honey, very artistic. Now, did you see what Alicia posted about her college interviews?" The financial disparity was the most obvious sign. Devin's medical school loans, Daddy co-signed without hesitation. Alicia's college fund, fully loaded since she was 5. My community college photography classes, "Education is important," Daddy said, "but you need to learn financial responsibility. Figure out how to pay for it yourself." But that was nothing compared to what happened next, because all of those little slights were building towards something bigger, something that would expose the truth about how my family really saw me. The conversation that shattered my world happened on November 15th, 2020. I remember the exact date because it was the day I learned that love, the kind I thought was unconditional, actually came with a price tag I could never afford. It was our annual Thanksgiving family dinner, the biggest gathering of the year where cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents all crowded into our house. Mama had been cooking for 3 days straight, and the house smelled like heaven with all her signature dishes. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. Earlier that week, I had finally worked up the courage to tell my parents about the opportunity of a lifetime. A local art gallery owner, Mrs. Chen, had seen some of my work at a coffee shop exhibition and offered me a chance to display my photography in her gallery's Emerging Artists Showcase. Not only that, but she wanted to mentor me and had connections to help me build a real career in photography. For the first time in years, I felt like I had something worth celebrating, something that proved I wasn't just drifting aimlessly like they thought. But when I told them, sitting in our living room with my heart racing from excitement and nerves, the response was underwhelming. "That's nice, sweetheart," Mama said, not looking up from the grocery list she was writing. "Just make sure it doesn't interfere with your job at the coffee shop. You still need to pay your bills." Daddy barely acknowledged what I said. "Photography galleries don't pay the rent, Jasmine. When are you going to get serious about your future?" But that Sunday dinner, that's when everything came crashing down. The whole extended family was there, all 23 of us crammed around those tables, the conversation flowing with laughter and the clinking of silverware against Mama's good china. The mood was perfect, Everyone was in high spirits, and for once, I thought maybe this would be the dinner where I finally felt like I belonged. It started innocently enough. Grandma Johnson was asking about everyone's accomplishments this year. It was her tradition. She'd go around the table and have everyone share their blessings and victories. Devin went first, naturally. He talked about completing his first year of residency, about the lives he'd helped save, about the recognition he'd received. The whole table hung on every word, murmuring appreciation and pride. "That's my grandson," Grandma declared, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "A real doctor in the family. Your grandfather would be so proud." Then it was Alicia's turn. She had just gotten her acceptance letter to Spelman College with a full academic scholarship. Plus, she'd been accepted into their prestigious pre-law program. The table erupted in cheers and applause. "That's what I'm talking about," Uncle Jerome shouted. "Spelman," Cousin Michelle added. "That's that excellence right there." Mama was practically glowing with pride, and Daddy? Lord, I had never seen him look so happy. He stood up from his chair, raising his glass of sweet tea like he was giving a toast. "To my baby girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "following in her mama's footsteps and making us all proud. That's how you do it." The whole table raised their glasses, and I felt that familiar pang in my chest, that mixture of happiness for my sister and deep, aching loneliness. But then Grandma Johnson turned to me with that sweet smile of hers. "And what about you, Jasmine, baby? What blessings are you sharing with us this year?" My heart started racing. This was it. This was my moment to tell them about the gallery, about Mrs. Chen, about the possibility that maybe I wasn't as lost as they thought. Well, actually, I have some exciting news too. There's this gallery owner who saw my photography work, and she wants to feature me in her Emerging Artists Showcase. She thinks I have real potential and wants to mentor me in building a photography business. It could be the start of something really big for me. The silence that followed was deafening. Not the good kind of silence that comes before applause. The uncomfortable kind that happens when someone says something that makes everyone else want to disappear. Daddy set down his sweet tea glass with a sharp clink against the table. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. "Jasmine," he said slowly, his voice carrying that tone of barely controlled frustration. "We've talked about this photography thing. It's a hobby, not a career. But, Daddy, this woman owns a successful gallery. She knows the business. She thinks she can make money off of you," he interrupted, his voice getting louder. "These people prey on young folks with big dreams and empty pockets. You're 20 years old, Jasmine. When are you going to stop chasing fantasies and get serious about your life?" The table was dead silent now. Everyone was staring at us, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment and hurt. But I couldn't let it go. Not this time. "It's not a fantasy, Daddy. It's an opportunity. Why can't you see that I might actually be good at something?" That's when he snapped. Daddy stood up from his chair so fast it scraped against the hardwood floor. His face was twisted with an anger I had never seen before, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire house. "You want to know why?" he shouted, his finger pointing directly at me. "Because I'm tired of watching you waste your life. I'm tired of making excuses for you. I'm tired of people asking me what happened to my middle child." The words hit me like physical blows, but he wasn't done. "Look around this table, Jasmine. Look at your brother. He's saving lives. Look at your sister. She's got a full scholarship to one of the best colleges in the country. And then there's you, taking pictures and calling it a career." And then he said the words that would haunt me for the next 3 years. "I'm proud of all my children," he declared, his voice carrying across the silent room, except the loser. 23 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. I looked at Mama, desperate for her to defend me, but she just sat there, staring at her plate. She agreed with him. I stood up from that table on legs that felt like they might give out. Nobody defended me, not one person. I walked to the front door with as much dignity as I could manage. As I reached for the handle, I heard Daddy's voice one more time. Maybe some tough love will finally wake her up. I left that house knowing I would never be the same. That night, lying in my bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to call me a loser, fine. But I was going to make sure that word became the most expensive thing my father ever said. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Not for them. They had no idea what was coming. But for me. Because sometimes, when people show you who they really are, the best revenge is becoming someone they could never imagine. The first week after that dinner was the worst week of my life. I called in sick to work every single day because I couldn't stop crying long enough to make coffee for customers. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even look at my photography equipment without hearing Daddy's voice calling it worthless. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had witnessed my public humiliation, but none of them were apologies. They were all variations of the same theme. Your daddy loves you, but maybe you should think about what he said, and he's just trying to help you get your life together. The only person who didn't text me was Daddy himself. No apology. No, I went too far. Just silence. Mama called once. One time, 3 days after the dinner. Jasmine, baby, you need to come home and talk to your father, she said, her voice tired and exasperated. This foolishness has gone on long enough. Foolishness? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Mama, he called me a loser in front of everyone. He was frustrated, baby. Maybe if you came home and apologized. Apologized for what? For trying to pursue something I'm passionate about? For being disrespectful at the dinner table? For embarrassing him in front of his family? I was the one who had been embarrassing. Not him, me. I hung up on my own mother for the first time in my life. By the second week, the depression had settled into my bones like a cold that wouldn't go away. I started having these terrible thoughts about how maybe they were right. Maybe I was a loser. Maybe I was wasting my life chasing something that would never amount to anything. Those thoughts scared me more than anything else because they felt like giving up on myself. And once you do that, what's left? But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chen called. I almost didn't answer because I'd been avoiding everyone, but something made me pick up on the fourth ring. Jasmine, dear, I haven't heard from you about the gallery showcase. Are you having second thoughts? Her voice was so kind, so genuinely concerned, that I started crying all over again. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The dinner, my father's words, the way my family saw me, all of it. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Jasmine, she said finally, may I tell you something about my own family? When I was your age, my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Art was not a real career in their minds either. They said I was wasting my talent, that I would never be able to support myself. She paused. I opened my first gallery 23 years ago. It was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, and I was terrified. But you know what? That tiny gallery became 3 galleries. Those 3 galleries became an art consulting business that works with collectors all over Texas. And last year, my hobby made more money than both of my parents ever dreamed of making. My breath caught in my throat. The people who love us sometimes have the smallest vision of who we can become, she continued. Not because they're cruel, but because they're afraid. They're afraid we'll fail, so they try to keep us small and safe. But small and safe isn't living, Jasmine. It's just existing. I saw your work at that coffee shop exhibition. Do you know what I saw? I saw someone who understands light and shadow, who can capture emotion in a single frame, who has an eye that can't be taught. That's not a hobby, dear. That's a gift. I was crying again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. But here's what I need you to understand, Mrs. Chen said, her voice becoming firmer. If you're going to do this, if you're going to build a real career in photography, you can't be looking for other people's approval, especially from people who've already decided what success looks like. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I whispered. You are, but you're going to have to prove it to yourself first. No one else can do that for you. After I hung up with Mrs. Chen, I sat in my apartment staring at my photography equipment. My camera, my lenses, my laptop, tools that my father saw as expensive toys, but that Mrs. Chen saw as instruments of a real profession. That night, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. I was going to prove them wrong. Not just prove them wrong, I was going to prove them so spectacularly, so undeniably wrong that the word loser would haunt my father for the rest of his life. But I wasn't going to do it for them. I was going to do it for me, for the little girl who used to take pictures with disposable cameras, for the teenager who was told her artistic interests were cute but not practical, for the young woman who had been systematically taught that her dreams weren't worth investing in. The next morning, I called Mrs. Chen back. I want to do the showcase, I told her, but I don't just want to participate. I want to learn everything. I want to understand the business, the marketing, the networking, all of it. I want to build something real. Now that, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, sounds like someone who's ready to get serious about her future. That afternoon, I went back to work at the coffee shop for the first time in over a week. Something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but it had transformed into something else, something harder, something useful. Fuel. I started working every shift I could pick up, channeling every ounce of my energy into becoming the photographer Mrs. Chen believed I could be. 3 months to the showcase, 3 months to prepare work that would either validate everything she saw in me or confirm everything my father believed about my hobby. But as I worked those long hours, I discovered something that would become the foundation of everything I built afterward. The people who believe in you when no one else does become more than mentors. They become your chosen family, and sometimes, chosen family loves you better than blood family ever could. While they celebrated their smart choice to write me off, I was quietly becoming someone who would make that choice look like the biggest mistake of their lives. And the beautiful part? They had no idea what was happening right under their noses. The next 6 months were the most intense period of my life. While my family continued their Sunday dinners, probably relieved they no longer had to pretend to be interested in my photography hobby, I was building something they couldn't even comprehend. Mrs. Chen wasn't just a mentor. She was a master class in turning artistic talent into business success. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I would meet her at her gallery after my coffee shop shifts. She taught me things they don't teach in business school, things that come from 23 years of actually building something from nothing. Talent is common, she told me during one of our sessions. Work ethic is rare, but the combination of talent, work ethic, and business intelligence, that's what separates artists who struggle from artists who thrive. She was relentless in her standards. Every photograph had to tell a story. Every composition had to be intentional. Every edit had to serve a purpose. She would make me explain why I chose each angle, each lighting setup, each post-processing decision. At first, it was intimidating, but gradually I realized she was teaching me to think like a professional, not just feel like an artist. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything, every lesson, every breakthrough, every small victory. I started a private Instagram account, not for my family to see, but to track my own progress. The before and after shots of my work were like night and day. The girl who had been taking cute pictures 6 months ago was becoming someone who could create images that stopped people in their tracks. The showcase in March was just the beginning. Mrs. Chen had bigger plans. The art world is about more than just creating beautiful work, she explained. It's about building relationships, understanding market trends, and positioning yourself as not just an artist, but as a brand. She introduced me to her network: gallery owners, art collectors, interior designers, marketing executives who needed creative content. Each introduction came with homework. Research their background, understand their needs, come prepared with questions that showed I was serious about building a business. The first networking event nearly broke me. I walked into that gallery opening wearing my one good dress and immediately felt like I didn't belong. Everyone seemed to know each other, speak the same language of art theory and market analysis, but Mrs. Chin had prepared me for this too. You belong here because your work belongs here, she had told me. Don't apologize for being new. Use it as an advantage. Ask questions. Show genuine curiosity. I met Jennifer Martinez that night, an interior designer who specialized in corporate spaces. She looked at the portfolio on my phone and stopped at a photograph I'd taken of downtown Dallas during golden hour. This is stunning, she said, zooming in on the details. Do you have prints available? That one conversation led to my first real commission. Jennifer needed large format photographs for a law firm's new offices. The project paid $3,000, more money than I'd ever made from my photography. But more importantly, it connected me to a world where my work had actual commercial value. Word started spreading through Jennifer's network. Within 2 months, I had shot promotional materials for 3 different businesses: headshots for a startup's executive team, and event photography for a nonprofit gala. Each job led to 2 more referrals. My coffee shop manager, Kevin, started noticing the change. You're different, he said one morning. More confident, like you know something the rest of us don't. He wasn't wrong. I was learning that there was an entire economy built around visual content that most people never see. Businesses need photographs for their websites, marketing materials, social media presence. Professionals need headshots. Events need documentation. And I was getting really, really good at all of it. Meanwhile, while I was grinding 12-hour days between my coffee shop job and my growing photography business, my family was living their lives as if I had simply evaporated. No phone calls, no text messages, nothing. The silence used to hurt. Now it was fuel. I found out through social media that Devin had gotten engaged to Nicole and they were planning a summer wedding. The post had 127 likes and 43 comments from family members congratulating the happy couple. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. It was like I didn't exist. Perfect. Let them think I was irrelevant while I built something they couldn't ignore. By May, my photography business had grown to the point where I could quit the coffee shop. Mrs. Chen helped me set up an LLC, taught me about contracts and liability insurance, and introduced me to an accountant who specialized in creative professionals. You're not just a freelancer anymore, she said. You're an entrepreneur. Start thinking like one. I rented a small studio space in the Deep Ellum Arts District. Nothing fancy, just 800 square feet with good natural light and room for my equipment. But it was mine. My name was on the lease. My work was on the walls. The first time I walked into that space and turned on the lights, I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from pure, overwhelming pride. 6 months ago, I was the family loser who couldn't get her life together. Now I was a business owner with a growing client base and a studio of my own. But I still wasn't ready for the revenge I had planned. I needed more. I needed something so big, so successful, so undeniably impressive that when the moment came, there would be no way to dismiss it as luck. That's when Mrs. Chen told me about the Texas Monthly Photography Competition. It's the biggest photography contest in the state, she explained. The winner gets a $10,000 prize, a feature spread in the magazine, and representation by one of the top photography agencies in Dallas. But more importantly, it's the kind of recognition that establishes you as a serious professional. The deadline was in 4 months. The theme was Hidden Texas. Photographers were supposed to capture aspects of Texas life that most people never see. I knew exactly what I wanted to shoot. For the next 3 months, I traveled across Texas every weekend, documenting stories that don't make it into tourism brochures. I photographed an 89-year-old woman who had been running a small town diner for 60 years. I captured the pre-dawn ritual of ranch hands preparing for cattle drives. I documented the intricate artwork of low-rider car culture in East Austin. Each photograph was technically perfect. Mrs. Chen had made sure of that. But more than that, each image captured something authentic and beautiful about communities that rarely get mainstream attention. 3 weeks before the competition deadline, I submitted my portfolio. 24 photographs that represented months of work, thousands of miles of travel, and every technique Mrs. Chen had taught me. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Chen called me with news that would change everything. Jasmine, she said, excitement barely contained in her voice, you need to sit down. You didn't just win, sweetheart. You dominated. I was about to give my family a master class in what happens when you underestimate someone who refuses to stay down. The first crack in their confident facade happened when Cousin Michelle posted a screenshot on the family group chat, the one I'd been removed from after the dinner incident. Alicia forwarded it to me with the message, Girl, they're shook. It was a screenshot of the Texas Monthly website announcing the photography competition winners. There, in black and white, was my name, Jasmine Johnson, first place winner, Hidden Texas Photography Competition. The prize amount was listed right underneath, $10,000. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was the comments underneath Michelle's post. Aunt Beverly? Wait, is this our Jasmine, Robert's daughter? Uncle Jerome, the one who dropped out of college? Cousin Trina. Y'all, I just looked at her Instagram. She's got a whole business, like a real business. Mama, how did we not know about this? The question that had everyone scrambling for answers. How indeed? I had been building an empire in plain sight, and they had been so convinced of my failure that they never bothered to look. But the real chaos started when the magazine hit newsstands. Mrs. Chen called me at 7 a.m. on publication day, practically vibrating with excitement. Jasmine, have you seen it yet? The feature? They gave you 8 full pages. 8 pages. I've been in this business for over 2 decades, and I've never seen them showcase a winner like this. When I finally held that magazine in my hands and saw my work, my photographs, sprawled across those glossy pages with my name and elegant typography underneath, I had to sit in my car for 20 minutes just to process it. The feature wasn't just about the photographs, it was about me, my story, my journey from college dropout to award-winning photographer. They had interviewed Mrs. Chen, several of my clients, and even some of the subjects from my photographs. The article painted a picture of a young artist who had built a successful business through raw talent and relentless work ethic. Within hours of hitting newsstands, my phone started ringing. Art galleries wanting to discuss representation, corporate clients asking about commercial photography packages, a talent agency interested in signing me for advertising campaigns, the photography agency that came with winning the competition, Henderson Creative, called to schedule a meeting about representation. They handled some of the biggest commercial photographers in the Southwest. Your portfolio shows a rare combination of technical skill and storytelling ability, the agency director explained. We have clients who've been asking for exactly this kind of authentic work, but the call that really got my attention came from Jennifer Martinez. Jasmine, I hope you're sitting down, she said, barely containing her excitement. I just got off the phone with the marketing director at Southwest Airlines. They want to commission you for a major campaign celebrating Texas culture. We're talking billboards, magazine ads, social media campaigns, the whole package. My hands started shaking. How much are we talking about? 6 figures, honey. They want to pay you 6 figures for a 3-month project. 6 figures. More money than my father made in a year selling insurance. More money than I had ever imagined making from my hobby. But the Southwest Airlines deal was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks of the magazine feature, I had booking requests worth over $200,000. Wedding photographers who had been working for decades were reaching out for advice. Art schools were inviting me to speak to their students, and through it all, my family maintained their radio silence until they couldn't anymore. The tipping point came when Channel 8 News decided to do a feature story about local entrepreneurs thriving during the pandemic. Someone had nominated me based on the Texas Monthly article. The news crew came to my studio on a Tuesday afternoon. The reporter asked thoughtful questions about my journey from college dropout to award-winning entrepreneur. What would you say to young people who feel like their artistic dreams aren't practical? She asked as the camera rolled. I thought about that question for a moment, remembering the girl who had sat at that family dinner table being told her photography was just a hobby. I'd tell them that the people who love you sometimes have the smallest vision of who you can become, I said, looking directly into the camera. Not because they don't care about you, but because they're afraid. They want to keep you safe from failure, so they try to keep you small. But safe and small isn't living, it's just existing. The segment aired on Friday evening during the 6 o'clock news. By Saturday morning, it had been shared over 500 times on social media. But more importantly, it had been seen by everyone in Dallas, including my family. Alicia called me within an hour of the broadcast. Jasmine, did you just did you just quote Mrs. Chen on live television while talking about family not believing in your dreams? Did I? Girl, you know you did, and everyone knows exactly what family you were talking about. She was right. The interviewer hadn't asked specifically about family members who doubted me, but my answer had made it pretty clear that I was speaking from personal experience. Daddy's phone has been ringing all morning, Alicia continued. People from church, colleagues from work, even his golf buddies. Everyone's asking him about his daughter, the famous photographer. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Uncle Jerome, a screenshot of a Facebook post. Proud of my niece Jasmine Johnson. Saw her on the news tonight talking about her photography business. Always knew this girl was special. Proud family. Young entrepreneur. The post had dozens of likes and comments from family members suddenly claiming they had always believed in me, always known I was talented, always been proud of my artistic abilities. The revisionist history was almost comical, but the most telling response came in what didn't happen. No call from Daddy, no text from Mama, no acknowledgement from the people whose opinions had once meant everything to me. They were watching, though. I knew they were watching, because other family members kept reporting back to me through Alicia. Mama keeps asking me questions about your business. Alicia told me, Like really specific questions. How long have you been successful? How much money are you really making? The silence from my parents was deafening, but it was also strategic. They were in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to handle the fact that their loser daughter had become exactly the kind of success story they celebrated in other families. But their silence gave me something valuable, more time to build something so undeniable that when the confrontation finally came, there would be no way to diminish what I had accomplished. The gathering storm was about to become a hurricane. By now, whispers were starting. People who knew our story were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions, and I was ready to give them answers they'd never forget. The 3 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were the most intense of my entire journey. It wasn't just about preparing for a family dinner anymore. It was about orchestrating the most spectacular vindication in Johnson family history. Mrs. Chen could sense the shift in my energy during our weekly meetings. "You're different," she observed. "More focused, more strategic. What's happening?" I told her about Grandma Johnson's call, about the Thanksgiving invitation, about the confrontation that was now inevitable. "Ah," she said, leaning back with a knowing smile. "The homecoming? I wondered when this moment would arrive." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if they still don't get it? What if they find a way to diminish what I've accomplished?" Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Jasmine, do you remember what you were like when you first walked into my gallery 18 months ago? You were talented but uncertain. You had potential, but you didn't believe in it yourself. Look at you now. You're running a six-figure business. Your work is on billboards across Texas. You're not the same person who left that dinner table in tears." She was right. I wasn't. The question isn't whether they'll get it. The question is whether you need them to get it. Because the woman sitting across from me right now, she doesn't need anyone's validation. But even as I drew strength from Mrs. Chen's words, I could feel the tension building throughout my extended family network. Alicia had become my unofficial intelligence gatherer. "It's chaos," she told me during one of our phone calls. "Mama keeps asking everyone if they knew about your success. Daddy's been unusually quiet, like scary quiet. Uncle Jerome keeps posting your news articles on Facebook. And Cousin Michelle, she's been telling everyone she always knew you were going to make it big." The revisionist history was already beginning, but while my family was spiraling into damage control mode, something even bigger was happening. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a call from Patricia Henderson at the photography agency. "Jasmine, I have some news that's going to sound surreal," she said, barely containing her excitement. "Vogue wants to commission you for a fashion spread." I nearly dropped the phone. Vogue? As in Vogue magazine? They want to do a high fashion shoot that celebrates Southern culture and style. Their creative director saw your Southwest Airlines campaign and your Texas Monthly feature. They want you to photograph models wearing designer clothes against authentic Texas locations. The fee she quoted made my head spin. More money for one shoot than most people make in 6 months. "There's more," Patricia continued. "They want to do a profile piece about you. Young photographer making waves in the industry, representing authentic Southern culture. It would be a huge career boost." The Vogue shoot was scheduled for the week after Thanksgiving, which meant the family dinner would happen right before what could be the biggest professional opportunity of my career. But the universe wasn't done with its perfect timing. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I got another call that would provide the final piece of my revenge puzzle. "Miss Johnson, this is Rebecca Sterling from Sterling Foundation. We provide grants to emerging artists and entrepreneurs. We've been following your work, and we'd like to discuss a significant opportunity." The Sterling Foundation was legendary in Texas arts circles. Their grants had launched careers of some of the most successful artists in the state. We're prepared to offer you a $50,000 grant to expand your business and document underrepresented communities across the American South. But we'd also like to discuss something more significant. My heart was pounding. We're launching a new initiative to support young women entrepreneurs in creative industries. We want to offer you funding, mentorship, office space, and marketing support to help you build a multimedia company. The total package value is approximately $200,000. I had to sit down. There's one condition. We'd like to announce this partnership at our annual gala, which happens to be this Saturday. It's a major event with media coverage. This Saturday, the day after Thanksgiving, the day after my family reunion. When I hung up the phone, I realized that the confrontation I'd been planning for 18 months was about to be followed immediately by the biggest professional validation of my career. The timing was so perfect, it felt like divine intervention. I spent the next 3 days preparing for Thanksgiving dinner like a general preparing for war. I researched every family member who would be there, prepared responses to every possible question, every potential criticism. I chose my outfit carefully, a sleek black dress that was professional but not flashy, simple gold jewelry, hair and makeup that said, successful businesswoman, without screaming, look at me. Most importantly, I prepared my mindset. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. The night before Thanksgiving, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining different scenarios, trying to predict how the evening would unfold. At 3 a.m., I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the college dropout who had been called a loser. This woman had confidence in her eyes, success in her posture, and the kind of quiet strength that comes from proving everyone wrong. I was ready. As I drove toward the house where I'd been systematically diminished and eventually publicly humiliated, I felt a calm settle over me. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about accountability. It was time to collect on the debt that had been 18 months in the making. The day I walked into that house knowing what was about to happen, I felt a calm I'd never experienced before. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about truth, and the truth was about to set everyone free, especially me. The first thing I noticed when I opened the front door was the silence. Not the comfortable silence of family absorbed in conversation, but the heavy, expectant silence of people who know something significant is about to happen. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me, just like they had 18 months ago. But this time, the expressions weren't filled with pity or secondhand embarrassment. They were filled with curiosity, nervousness, and something I'd never seen directed at me before: respect. Jasmine. Grandma Johnson's voice cut through the tension as she pushed herself up from her chair. There's my famous granddaughter. She embraced me with the fierce hug of someone who had been waiting for this moment as long as I had. Everyone, she announced to the room, look who's finally come home. The room erupted in a chorus of greetings that felt forced and overly enthusiastic. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in 2 years were suddenly rushing over with congratulations. Aunts and uncles who had watched me be publicly humiliated were now claiming they'd always known I was special. But through it all, I kept my eyes on the two people who mattered most. Mama stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her expression a complex mixture of pride, regret, confusion, and something that looked like fear. And Daddy? Daddy was sitting in his usual chair at the head of the dining room table, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger, not pride, but something more complex, something that looked like he was seeing me for the first time. Robert, Grandma Johnson called out, her voice carrying just enough edge to make it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Aren't you going to say hello to your daughter? The room went quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this first interaction would play out. Daddy stood up slowly, straightening his shirt in a gesture I recognized as nervousness. Hello, Jasmine. You, you look well? I am well, Daddy. Very well. I heard about your photography work, he continued, his tone carefully neutral. Congratulations. Thank you. Uncle Jerome, who had never been able to read a room, chose that moment to jump in. Jasmine, girl, we saw you on TV, and that billboard. I tell everyone that's my niece up there. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Uncle Jerome had been sitting at this very table 18 months ago when I was called a loser. Cousin Michelle chimed in next. And that magazine feature, we're all just so proud of you. We always knew you had it in you. Always knew. The revisionist history was already beginning. Is that right? I asked, my voice pleasant but with just enough edge to make people shift uncomfortably. Because I don't remember hearing much support for my photography before. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alicia tried to redirect the conversation. Jasmine, tell everyone about the Vogue shoot. I still can't believe my sister is going to be in Vogue magazine. That got everyone's attention. Vogue was a name that commanded respect, even from people who had never read a fashion magazine. Vogue? Aunt Beverly's eyes went wide. As in, the Vogue. They commissioned me for a fashion spread featuring Southern culture, I explained. It shoots next week. The room buzzed with impressed murmurs, but I could see Daddy's jaw tightening. He was losing control of the narrative. That's very impressive, Jasmine, he said, his voice carrying that tone of careful condescension I knew so well. I hope you're being smart about this. These opportunities can be fleeting. It's important to have realistic expectations. There it was, the dismissal, the attempt to diminish. The room went dead silent. I smiled, a real smile this time. You're absolutely right, Daddy. It's important to be realistic about career viability. That's why I'm glad I can share some concrete numbers with everyone. I pulled out my phone and opened my Notes app. This year, my photography business will gross approximately $400,000. My net profit will be around $280,000 after expenses. That's just from photography. It doesn't include additional revenue streams I'm developing. You could have heard a pin drop. Next year, with the contracts I've already signed, I'm projected to gross over $600,000. The Vogue shoot alone pays more than most people make in 6 months. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each family member who had witnessed my humiliation. So you're right, Daddy. It's very important to be realistic about career viability. Based on these numbers, I'd say my artistic career is quite viable. Daddy's face had gone completely pale. Oh, and I should mention, tomorrow I'm announcing a partnership with the Sterling Foundation. They're providing $200,000 in funding and support to help me expand into a multimedia company. Uncle Jerome let out a low whistle. Jesus, Jasmine, that's serious money. It is serious money, Uncle Jerome, for serious work, which is why I'm a little confused by some of the reactions I've been getting from family. I looked directly at Daddy. See, for the past 18 months, I've been building something extraordinary, and during that entire time, not one person in this room, except for Grandma Johnson and Alicia, reached out to check on me, to support me, or even to ask how I was doing. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Instead, I had to find out through social media that my own brother was getting married. I had to watch from the outside as this family celebrated achievements while completely ignoring mine. Mama finally found her voice. Jasmine, sweetheart, we always believed in you. We were worried about your financial stability. I turned to look at her. Mama, do you remember what you said to Aunt Beverly after I left that dinner? When you thought I couldn't hear you? Her face went white. You said, some kids just don't have that drive. We've given her every opportunity, but you can't force motivation that isn't there. The accusation hung in the air. And Daddy, I continued, you said, the boy got my ambition, the baby got Patricia's intelligence, and Jasmine, well, maybe she'll surprise us all one day. Maybe, one day, if you were lucky. Daddy's expression had shifted from defensive to genuine shock. But the most interesting thing is what you said 18 months ago, right here in this room, in front of everyone. I looked around the table, making eye contact with each witness. You said you were proud of all your children, except the loser. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. That loser daddy just had her work featured in Texas Monthly magazine. That loser just signed a six-figure contract with Southwest Airlines. That loser is about to be featured in Vogue. That loser is being funded by one of the most prestigious foundations in Texas. My voice never rose above conversational level, but every word landed like a hammer blow. So here's what I want to know, and I want everyone here to help me understand this. Exactly what kind of loser does all of that? Daddy opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Because I've been trying to figure this out for 18 months. I've been trying to understand how someone could look at their own daughter and see failure where there was actually potential. How someone could dismiss dreams that were actually plans. How someone could call their own child a loser in front of the entire family. Grandma Johnson's voice cut through the tension. Robert Johnson, you answer that girl's question right now. Daddy looked around the room, searching for support that wasn't coming. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I was wrong, Jasmine. I was wrong about your photography. I was wrong about your potential. I was wrong to say what I said. It was the first time in my life I had ever heard my father admit he was wrong about anything. But I wasn't finished. You were wrong about more than my photography, Daddy. You were wrong about what success looks like. You were wrong about what dreams are worth supporting. You were wrong about your own daughter's worth. I stood up from my chair. For 18 months, I've been proving to myself that I was never the problem. Your inability to see my potential was your limitation, not my reality. Your narrow definition of success was your failure, not mine. I picked up my purse. I came here today not because I needed your approval. I stopped needing that a long time ago. I came here because I thought you deserved to know who your daughter actually is, what she's actually accomplished, what she's actually capable of. I started walking toward the door. Jasmine, wait, Mama called out, her voice breaking. Please don't leave. We want to make this right. I turned back to face her. Make it right? Mama, you can't make 18 months of silence right. You can't make systematic dismissal right. You can't make calling your own daughter a loser in front of her entire family right. Tears were streaming down her face. But you can do better going forward. You can recognize that success comes in many forms. You can support dreams even when they don't look like your dreams. I looked at Daddy one more time. And you can remember that the word loser became the most expensive word you ever spoke, because it cost you a relationship with the daughter who turned out to be everything you said she couldn't be. As I reached for the door handle, Alicia jumped up from her chair. Jasmine, wait, I'm coming with you. She grabbed her purse and coat. I want to hear more about this Vogue shoot, and I think you could use some family support at that Sterling Foundation announcement tomorrow. As we walked out together, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete emotional freedom. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer feared their judgment. I no longer carried the weight of their expectations. I was exactly who I was supposed to be, and that was enough. In the silence that followed, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about proving to myself that I was never the problem. Their inability to see my worth was their limitation, not my reality. The drive away from that house felt surreal. Alicia and I sat in comfortable silence for the first few minutes, both processing what had just happened. The weight of 18 months of preparation, hurt, and determination was finally lifting from my shoulders. "Pull over," Alicia said suddenly. "I need a minute to process what I just witnessed." I pulled into a parking lot, and we both sat there staring out at the Dallas skyline. "Jasmine," Alicia said quietly, "I owe you an apology that goes way deeper than what happened at that dinner 18 months ago." I turned to look at her, surprised by the tears in her eyes. I participated in that system. I benefited from being the golden child while you were being systematically dismissed. I knew it was happening, and I didn't speak up because it was easier to be the favorite than to risk challenging the dynamic. Her honesty was both painful and healing. When Daddy called you a loser that night, I should have stood up and walked out with you. Instead, I sat there and let it happen. I chose my comfort over your dignity, and I've regretted it every single day since. We both cried then. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. Tears that washed away years of resentment and cleared the space for something real to grow between us. "You know what the crazy part is?" I said after we'd both composed ourselves. "In some ways, I'm grateful it happened the way it did." "How can you say that?" "Because if they had supported me from the beginning, I might never have developed the strength I needed to build what I built. Their dismissal forced me to find my own worth, my own validation, my own definition of success, and that made me stronger than I ever could have been with their approval." My phone started buzzing with text messages. Word was already spreading through the family network. Uncle Jerome, "Girl, that was something else. Your daddy looks like he's seen a ghost." Cousin Michelle, "I can't stop thinking about what you said." Made me realize I need to apologize too. But the message that stopped me cold came 20 minutes later. "Mama." I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message with Alicia beside me. "Jasmine, baby." Mama's voice was shaky, broken. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me right now, but I need you to know. What you said in there was true. All of it. We failed you. I failed you. Not just with the dinner, but with years of not seeing who you really were." She paused, and I could hear her crying. "I've been sitting here thinking about all the times I dismissed your dreams, all the times I made you feel like you weren't enough, all the times I chose your siblings' comfort over your feelings, and I'm ashamed." The message continued with Mama apologizing for specific incidents I'd forgotten, acknowledging patterns of favoritism I hadn't even fully recognized. "I love you, baby girl. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it in a way that honored who you actually are instead of who I thought you should be." 20 minutes later, another call came in. Daddy. I stared at his name on my phone screen, debating whether to answer. "Hello, Daddy." "Jasmine, can we talk? Really talk. Not in front of everyone, just us." "Okay, I'm listening." "First, I want to say that everything you said in there was true. Every word. I did call you a loser. I did dismiss your dreams. I did fail to see your potential. And I did it consistently, systematically, for years. This was not the conversation I had expected." "Why?" I asked simply. He was quiet for a long time. "Because I was afraid," he said finally. "I was afraid you would fail, and I thought if I could steer you towards something more practical, I could protect you from disappointment." So you disappointed me instead? Yes, and in trying to protect you from the possibility of failure, I became the thing that guaranteed your failure, at least in my eyes. He paused. But Jasmine, the truth is, my fear wasn't really about you. It was about me. I was afraid that if my daughter pursued something unconventional and failed, it would reflect poorly on me, on my parenting, on my family's reputation. The honesty was stunning. So I chose my own comfort over your dreams. I chose my reputation over your happiness. I chose my fear over your potential. Yes, you did. And today, listening to you list your achievements, your income, your opportunities, I realized that not only was I wrong about your potential, I was wrong about everything. You didn't just succeed despite my lack of support. You succeeded because you had something I never recognized: the strength to believe in yourself when no one else would. We talked for another 20 minutes, but the most important thing he said came at the very end. I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that watching you today, seeing your confidence, your accomplishments, your dignity, it's the proudest I've ever been. Not proud in a way that has anything to do with me, but proud in the way you're proud of someone you admire. I don't need you to be proud of me, Daddy. I know, but I need you to know that I am. That evening, I reflected on everything that had happened. The confrontation I'd been building toward for 18 months was over, but it hadn't ended the way I'd expected. I'd thought it would be about proving them wrong. Instead, it had been about proving myself right. I'd thought it would be about making them pay for their dismissal. Instead, it had been about freeing myself from their judgment. The girl who had been called a loser 18 months ago was gone. She had been replaced by a woman who knew her own worth, defined her own success, and didn't need anyone else's validation to feel complete. Success, I learned, isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about building a life so fulfilling that their opinions become irrelevant background noise. The Sterling Foundation Gala was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The ballroom at the Four Seasons was filled with Dallas's most influential artists, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists. I stood at the edge of the room in my floor-length black gown, watching the crowd of people who represented the pinnacle of creative and business success in Texas. Nervous? Mrs. Chen appeared beside me, elegant in navy silk. No, I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. I belong here. It was the first time in my life I had said those words and completely believed them. When Rebecca Sterling took the stage to introduce me, describing my work and the foundation's investment in my future, I felt something I'd never experienced before: unconditional pride in my own achievements. This year's recipient has built a photography business that has grown from a part-time dream to a six-figure enterprise in less than 2 years, Rebecca announced. More than that, her work represents authentic storytelling that celebrates communities often overlooked by mainstream media. Please join me in welcoming photographer and entrepreneur Jasmine Johnson. As I walked to the stage, passing tables full of successful artists and business leaders who were applauding my achievements, I thought about the family dinner just 24 hours earlier. The contrast was stark and deeply meaningful. Yesterday, I had been defending my worth to people who should have recognized it years ago. Tonight, I was being celebrated by strangers who saw my value immediately. After the ceremony, I was surrounded by people wanting to discuss collaborations and opportunities: gallery owners, magazine editors, creative directors from advertising agencies. The kind of professional network I had been building slowly was suddenly expanding exponentially. But the conversation that would prove most significant came from Dr. Patricia Williams from the University of Texas. "I've been following your work since the Texas Monthly feature," she said. I wonder if you'd be interested in discussing a teaching opportunity with us. We're developing a new program that combines artistic practice with business development. We need instructors who understand both sides. The opportunity was intriguing, but it represented something bigger than just another job offer. Would this be in addition to my photography practice? Absolutely. We're looking for working professionals who can bring real world experience to our students. Someone who can teach them not just how to create art, but how to build careers around their art. Teaching other young artists how to build sustainable businesses around their passions, how to persist when people dismiss their dreams. This was exactly what I wanted to pursue. As the weeks passed, my relationship with my family entered uncertain but hopeful territory. Mama called regularly now, not with careful, tentative tones, but with genuine interest in my work and life. She asked thoughtful questions about my business, celebrated my successes without trying to take credit, and acknowledged my struggles without minimizing them. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me during one conversation, about how we defined success so narrowly that we couldn't see other forms of achievement. I realized I did the same thing to myself. I had dreams of writing when I was younger, but I convinced myself they weren't practical. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. "I'm proud of you for not accepting our limitations," she continued. "You saved yourself from the regret I've been carrying for 20 years. Daddy's transformation was more gradual, but equally significant. He started following my work on social media, sharing posts with thoughtful captions about supporting young entrepreneurs. He began asking detailed questions about my business strategy, treating me like the successful professional I had become. Most importantly, he started talking about my success in the same tone he used for Devin's medical career, with genuine pride and respect. The change that meant the most came from Devin himself. He called with news that would reshape our entire family dynamic. "I've been thinking about what you said at Thanksgiving," he began, "about pursuing something you actually love versus something that's expected. I've decided to leave my residency program to pursue medical photography." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "So, you're leaving medicine to pursue photography?" "I'm combining them, kind of like how you combined art with business strategy. I guess you could say you inspired me to think beyond traditional career paths." My refusal to accept their limitations had given my brother permission to reject those same limitations. My success had created space for his own reimagined career. As winter turned to spring, I found myself living without the psychological weight I'd carried for most of my life. I no longer needed external approval to feel confident in my choices. The revenge I'd spent 18 months planning had evolved into something much more valuable: a complete life transformation. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, remember this: your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is underestimating you, because it forces you to prove just how wrong they really are. It's been 2 years since that Thanksgiving dinner. 2 years since I walked out of my childhood home as the family disappointment and walked back in as someone they couldn't ignore. 2 years since I learned the difference between being dismissed and being liberated. My photography business now generates over $1 million annually and employs 12 people. But the numbers aren't what matter most. What matters is the young woman who called me last week, crying because her family told her art school was a waste of money. I was able to offer her an internship and scholarship opportunities through the foundation I established. What matters is the father who approached me after a speaking engagement, tears in his eyes, to apologize for dismissing his daughter's musical ambitions. They were planning to visit recording studios together the following weekend. What matters is that I've become living proof that being underestimated can be the greatest motivation you'll ever receive. The teaching position at UT has become one of my favorite aspects of my career. Every semester, I meet young artists who remind me of myself at 19. The people who love us sometimes have the smallest vision of who we can become, I tell them on the first day of class. Not because they're cruel, but because they're afraid. But small and safe isn't living, it's just existing. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're the family disappointment, the one with impractical dreams, the person everyone has given up on, understand this. Their inability to see your potential is not evidence of your limitations. It's evidence of theirs. You don't need their approval to be worthy. You don't need their investment to be valuable. You don't need their understanding to be successful. What you need is the courage to define success on your own terms, the persistence to pursue your vision despite external skepticism, and the wisdom to surround yourself with people who see potential where others see problems. The people who count you out are doing you a favor. They're freeing you from the weight of their expectations and giving you the gift of having to prove your worth to the only person whose opinion truly matters, yourself. Revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. Revenge is about building a life so authentic, so fulfilling, so undeniably successful that their ability to hurt you simply disappears. So, to everyone who's ever been called a loser, dismissed as impractical, or told their dreams aren't worth investing in, thank them. Thank them for motivating you to build something they never could have envisioned, and then prove them so spectacularly wrong that their dismissal becomes the catalyst for your greatest achievements. My name is Jasmine Johnson, and 2 years ago, I was the family loser. Today, I'm exactly who I was always meant to be. Thanks for taking this journey with me. Drop a comment about your own experiences with family expectations. Smash that like button if this story resonated with you. And subscribe for more stories about turning your biggest defeats into your greatest victories. Because your story isn't over, it's just getting started.